Welcome to today's podcast interview. I brought on Dr. Mort Orman. Dr. Mort, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, Heather.
Please give listeners a little background. Where do you live and what do you do?
I live in Florida. I used to be from Maryland. Moved down to Florida a couple years ago with my wife, and our daughter's down here. And I'm a internal medicine doctor, retired from active practice, but I've spent the last 40 years teaching people how to eliminate anger and stress from their lives. And now that I have more time on my hands than when I was working professionally, I've got more time to do that now. So that's my new career. The retirement career is helping people get rid of anger and being happier and healthier and having better relationships.
And that's why I wanted to have you on. Obviously, emotions are a big part in creating every result in our life. But what I love about your work is eliminating stress versus media markets stress management.
Yes, yes. And there's a big difference. Managing is after it's happened, and you say, okay, now what am I going to do with this pent up tension or this pent up exasperation or frustration or anger or whatever it is that got created within me? What am I going to do with it? And then you can learn, you can punch a punching bag, you can run 5 miles, you can take deep breaths, you listen to soft music, you can do all that management stuff. Okay, but I like to work on the creating side, like what's creating the stress, what's creating the anger, and can you figure out that so that you can get your hands on the controls and turn it on and off whenever you want to, particularly off when you don't when it's something you don't want to have in your life. And that's what I like to teach people how to do. I know there's plenty of people teaching management skills, so I don't bother, focusing on those. They have value. They all have value. They have health benefits. They're better than drinking and smoking and using drugs and stuff like that. But it's much better if you know how to stop getting angry rather than, how do I manage the anger for the rest of my life?
Well, and I think obviously this is a big paradigm shift because our culture has glorified stress. We have a
Yes,
grind mentality. It's like a badge of honor who's more
yes,
stressed out.
yes. Which assumes, with the assumption behind that is that you're stuck with it. It's just part of life. You have to put up with it and do the best.
Right.
And that's not really true. That's not really true. And when you think that way, when you've been brainwashed to think that way or hypnotized to think that way, then it shuts you off from exploring any creative solutions that might be out there, like I offer and other people offer, because you've just shut yourself down. You said, well, I can't get rid of the stress. The best I can do is manage it. So let me figure out how to manage it well. You've completely eliminated a whole bunch of options that would have been much better because have this mindset that, well, it's just part of life. You can't escape it. It's just everybody has it. You got to put up with it, which is totally false. It's literally fake. It's literally fake news, and we don't know it.
Good. Let's turn this around. So let's talk about, because this is what I love, and getting to the root cause. And so
Uh-huh.
ultimately most people are living in reactive mode on a
Hmm.
consistent basis
Hmm.
rather than proactive dealing with the internal state. Let's start there.
Yes. So one of the so just my background is when I went into medicine, when I did my training, and I was a young physician in my 20s and 30s. I had a ton of anger. I was really an angry guy. I had a lot of anxiety. All my relationships failed, partly due to anger. So I had a ton of anger, and I couldn't get rid of it. I tried all the standard stuff, the management stuff, stress management, anger management. Every day I woke up, I was still the same angry guy, which is kind of interesting because my birthday is February 2nd, which is Groundhog's Day. But it literally felt like Groundhog's Day. Every day you wake up, you're creating the anger all over again. So, so I never really wanted to manage the anger. I wanted to stop being angry, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. And I assumed, since I tried so hard and failed, and I usually had succeeded in most things I put in my mind, I figured that's just the way it's going to be forever and ever. That's my personality. That's who I am. I did not, if you'd asked me back then, do I ever foresee a time when I would not be angry? I would have said, that's not in the cards for me. It's not going to happen. Okay. But what's interesting is I was taking care of patients. So when you take care of, as a doctor, when you start taking care of patients, you can easily spot the angry people from the not so angry people. And you're following this group, both groups, over time, and you see what happens. Health wise, family wise, career wise. You see all the bad stuff that happens to the angry folks a lot more frequently and a lot more, worse off than the people who are more mellow and more, less angry and that kind of. And so you're watching this parade of human suffering go by, and you're sitting there with your own anger, and you say to yourself, boy, I better figure this out. So that kept driving me forward and not giving up, which I could have easily done. Okay. A lot of people do today. But and that got me into personal development, which again, a lot of busy people don't make the time to do, but I thought it was important. And I wanted to find a solution to this anger and stress problem I was having. Okay. And after a couple of years, I finally kind of lucked into putting some things together from different disciplines that I'd studied. I put together a little system that surprised the hell out of me how well it worked, because it really helped me see for the first time the internal causes, the internal mindsets that were producing my problems, particularly my anger, since we're talking about that today. But once I saw what was really going on internally, then it was like, oh my, now I see why. Now I know why I was never able to do anything about it, because I was missing the critical puzzle pieces. Now I have them. Okay, now I can figure out what to do once I know what the mechanism is. Okay. Yeah. I was thinking of an analogy this morning actually on my walk. It's literally like back in medicine in the days when we didn't understand infectious diseases. So we knew that sometimes people got sick, and if you got around them, you could end up sick. So we knew there was that process where a sick person caused another person to get sick, but we didn't understand how it happened because the main causes were invisible. So, and then we discovered bacteria and viruses, which you can't see, okay, with the naked eye. And then we said, oh, well, now we understand. So the sick person transmits a bacteria or a virus, which the other person catches, and it grows in their body, and then they get sick. Okay, so now we understand the process. There's this visible thing, a sick person. There's this invisible thing, a bacteria, or a virus, and then there's this visible thing, a second sick person. Okay, and then decades later, we discover there's an immune system in the mix, which we didn't know about. So it's not just the bacteria or the virus; it's that there's also an immune system in the body that's invisible, and those two forces, will determine whether you end up with a sick person or not. But they're both invisible, and we didn't know they were there for a long, long time. Okay, now we know it's a four-step process. Sick person sheds a bacteria or a virus, comes in contact with the immune system, which either squashes it or lets it get through, and then you possibly get the sick person. So we know there was four steps in the process. Well, it's like that with our emotions. We don't understand our emotions. We're like hundreds of years in the past in terms of our maturity and understanding our emotions. It's like literally like infectious disease understanding. We don't realize that it's a four-step process. You get the external event that triggers you, whatever that is. You can see it. Everybody can see it. And then you get the emotion, which you feel in your body, let's say anger. And it looks like it's one causes two. Somebody said something to me I didn't like, somebody did something I didn't like, somebody broke something, broke a promise, whatever. And I feel the anger now. It looks like direct cause effect. And they don't realize, just like with infectious diseases, there's two other causes inside us that are invisible that we're totally blind to. We can't feel them, we can't taste them, we can't sense them. But that's where the magic is. That's where the emotion gets created. And we have not been educated about those two invisible internal steps. That's what I discovered 40 years ago that I didn't realize and all my medical training didn't introduce me to any of that stuff. Plus the dabbling I did in psychology didn't. It wasn't until I did all this personal development and pieced it together from different people that I was able to figure this out. And then ever since then, it's like, okay, now I know whenever I get angry, it's a four-step process. I know the three steps preceding the anger. Whereas most people only know the first one, which is the external trigger. They're missing the other two important ones, and that's why they walk around thinking I can't do anything about my anger. You can't. If you've only got one of the three causes and you're missing the two most important ones, you cannot do anything other than manage your anger. You can't stop it. You can't decide to not be angry, and make that happen. But once you know the whole thing, just like with infectious diseases, there's four things involved, two invisible. Now you can go to work and you can figure out, okay, what do I do about the bacteria? What do I do about the immune system? How do I strengthen the immune system? How do I all that kind of stuff.
So what are the two you haven't shared? Because you shared the event, the emotion. What are the other two?
Yeah. So the two things. So the first thing is we realize as human beings, we have to realize as human beings, we never see the world and events as they actually happen. There's too much data coming into our senses and our brain, It's just too much for it to handle. So over the years, our brain has learned how to chunk things down and simplify things, and it filters everything. So we've got hundreds and hundreds of filters that our brain creates because it can't take in all the data. So it decides what's important, what's not important. It leaves stuff out, and it gives us a nice, simple picture that we can work with and make decisions on and, act in response to all that kind of stuff. But that's what the brain's constantly doing. It's filtering everything. So we're never seeing the actual reality of life outside of us. We're seeing a filtered version of it or multiple filtered versions of it. Okay. And there's three particular filters that cause anger. And they're really simple. And everybody kind of understands this intuitively, but here's what they are. So when we get angry, we're looking at the world in a certain way through certain filters. And the first one is that we see somebody doing something bad and wrong they shouldn't have done. So that's the first filter. So notice we don't get angry when we think somebody did something wonderful or terrific or fantastic. It's only when we look at it and we see it through the filter of bad and wrong and shouldn't have done. Okay. Then the second filter is we usually see some hurt or harm or negative impact from the bad behavior. Somebody was hurt, somebody was harmed, somebody was inconvenienced, disappointed, injured, whatever. Okay. And then the third filter is it's called unilateral blame. So we have a very narrow blame filter. It's focused primarily on the person who did the bad and wrong thing. And it's like we have horse blinders on. We can only see what that person did and didn't do, and we can't see any other causes that might have been involved. So that's called unilateral blame. When you get those three filters, somebody did some, and people should write this down, by the way, because this will be useful. You'll be able to use this for the rest of your life to understand anytime you get angry. This is where it's coming from. Somebody did something bad and wrong they shouldn't have done. Somebody or something was hurt or harmed or negatively impacted, and the responsible party was 100% to blame for the bad and wrong behavior and the hurt and harm they created. So, for example, suppose you're angry at your computer one day because it's on the blink and it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. All right, you're working and your computer starts malfunctioning and you get angry. All right, and you want to punch it or something. Why'd you get angry? Well, you saw the computer doing something you judged to be bad and wrong that it shouldn't be doing. It's malfunctioning. You're negatively impacted now because your work is interrupted. You can't do what you want to do. And who or what was to blame for the malfunction of the computer? Well, it's the computer, obviously, right? So when you line those three things up, then you get anger. Suppose you get angry at your partner. You're in a relationship, a partner or a kid, and you get angry. Well, the kid's doing, you're seeing the kid doing something you think is bad and wrong. You or somebody else is being negatively impacted. And the kid's to blame for their bad behavior because you've told them what to do and they didn't follow your advice, okay? Or whatever it is. So you can take any example of anger that's ever occurred in human history, and it'll always boil down to the seeing through those three filters. Now, there's thousands of different things that can trigger that, but it all comes through to our brain as somebody did something bad and wrong, somebody was hurt and harmed, negatively impacted, somebody was unilaterally responsible to blame. So that's where anger comes from. And you should write that on a sticky note or on an index card or put it on your cell phone or tattoo it on your arm or whatever so you can remember it, because that is the awareness that we don't have, most of us don't have, that we have to constantly remind ourselves, okay, I'm angry. Here's why I'm angry. I'm looking at it in these three ways. And you always will be, okay? You can go to the bank on that. I've been doing it for 40 years. It's never not been the case, right? Anytime I start working with a new client in a coaching program that I have, first thing I do is I say, before we start, write down 5 examples of any time in your life you ever got angry before I teach them anything, okay? I don't have any idea what they wrote down, but all 5 of them fit that formula, and it's never not worked. It's literally 100% of the time, whatever they write down that I would have no way of knowing about, they would acknowledge, yes, I was looking at it this way, I was looking at it this way, and I was looking at it this way. I said, bingo, that's why you got angry. Okay. So that's the first thing they learn day one in this program is this is where your anger is coming from. Now there's what can you do with that is another question. And there's a second hidden cause, like the immune system that I talked about. There's a second hidden cause that comes in that we don't see either. And that so the first hidden cause is our brains filtering everything. And by the way, some of those filters are faulty. They leave things out. We have missing information. There's some distortions involved sometimes. So it's not always accurate what's coming through those filters. But the second thing that happens is our brain immediately tells us that it is accurate. It's true. I call it the stamp of truth. And it's lightning fast. It happens so fast you can't even notice it's happening. But your brain filters what's ever going on, and then it tells you what it filtered is not filtered, it's true. No filtering going on here. You're seeing the truth. And when you think you're seeing the truth, that's when the emotion comes from. Okay, when you really believe those three things, then the hormones and the neurotransmitters and the stuff that gets fired in the body does so to produce the emotion of anger. And it's the same for other emotions. If you have anxiety, it's the exact same thing. It's just different filters that are producing the anxiety.
Here's what I want to ask you. So here's what's coming to mind. When you're talking about the filter, are you talking about the RAS, our reticular activating system?
I, I'm not trying to localize it. I'm just saying our brain and our nervous system and our body,
Yeah,
whatever parts of it are involved,
right.
has been programmed to do that, to do the filtering. Whatever the internal mechanisms are, they're probably very complex, and whatever theories we currently have are probably not correct. So it's probably not localized to one specific area of the brain or body. Probably lots of areas are involved, which is what we're finding out about the brain whenever we dig in deeper. But but it's all become part of our nervous system and our brain's functioning, and that's where the filters operate. And we get these filters. These filters get built from a combination of our DNA, because some of them we inherited over millions of years back when our brains had to make quick decisions, in prehistoric times and all that stuff, to the families we grow up in, the schools we go to, the books we read, the movies we expose ourselves to, and the culture we live in. We're all and the media sources we listen to on. We're all getting programmed constantly, which is producing filters that we see the world through.
So everything you just explained, especially these three steps of anger, I wrote down three words that really sum it up for me. So I just want to hear your thoughts. What it really comes down to is our perception, our attitude, and our beliefs.
I think those are all correct, but they just factor into the filter. They're baked into the filters.
Yeah.
Okay. But ultimately, all roads lead to Rome. It's all going to lead to, you saw it as bad and wrong. However, whatever belief you had that made you judge it bad and wrong, it's just going to be baked in. Okay.
Right.
The outcome is you're going to see it as bad and wrong. Okay. Or you're going to see hurt and harm, negative impact, or you're going to see unilateral blame. Just to give an example from my own personal life. So fortunately, and my wife and I, actually yesterday was our 40th wedding anniversary. Okay. Believe me, that never would have happened had I not figured this out 40 some years ago before I met her. So fortunately, I figured out this anger game before I met my wife. She never had a lot of anger in her life. So consequently, we haven't had a lot of anger in our relationship. We very rarely fought over our whole 40 years. But in the beginning of our relationship, there was this one odd instance where we started fighting with each other, and it happened a couple times in a row. And it was so unusual, it stuck out like a sore thumb. Most couples, if you're arguing all the time, you're not going to notice one from another. But when you have a baseline of 0 arguments, and all of a sudden an argument pops up, it's going to go like, whoa, that's odd. I wonder why that's happening. Well, this happened like 3 times in a row. And it only happened, I noticed, when we went on a car trip somewhere. Never any other time. And even more interesting, it didn't happen when we drove to our destination. We didn't fight. We didn't argue when we were at our destination. It only happened on the ride home. Even weirder. Okay. So when I saw this pattern, I said, all right, something fishy is going on here. I got to figure this out. All right. So, and what would usually happen is we would start driving home. I'd be driving and we'd be on our way. And at some point, my wife would say, oh, there's something over here that I'd really like to go see. It's only an hour off of our path. Let's go do that. And I would turn to her and I'd go like, no, we're not doing that. With a tone, with a judgmental tone, said, no, we're not doing that. And she would go, what do you mean we're not doing that? And then we'd start, snipping at each other. And so I looked at my 3 filters because I knew I was sort of angry with her because I had an angry tone and I was sort of accusing her. And so I said, okay, am I judging her to be doing something bad and wrong? Yes. You're not supposed to deviate from the path home. And then And then I said to myself, well, so that's what my filter's telling me. Is it really true? Is she really doing something bad and wrong by wanting to go? And I said, as soon as I asked the question, I went like, oops. It's not really that she's doing something bad and wrong. It's just different than the way I'm used to doing it or my family did. It turns out our families had two different ways of driving home. Her family would always do that. And our family, we went directly home. We never deviated. So when I really asked the question, my filter was telling me she was doing something bad and wrong. Okay. But when I ask myself, is it true? Is the filter giving me fake news or is it giving me real news? Okay. I write, boy, it's giving me fake news. She's not doing something bad and wrong.
Mm.
Okay. That solved that problem for me. And we've never had it come up again because I no longer see that request as some kind of a crime or some kind of a wrongdoing. It's and so there's nothing for me to be angry about. So I say, sure, if you want to go over here, fine, let's go do that. If that's what you want to do, if it'll make you happy, let's go do that. It's completely eliminated the problem because I saw it, not how my filter was telling me to see it, but how I understood the truth to be, which was different than my filter. And once you see the truth, it's kind of hard to unsee it. So like that carried on over time to where every time that situation came up, I might have started to have that knee jerk, I want to oppose that suggestion. But as soon as it happened, I go, oh, that's stupid. She's not doing anything wrong. Let's go. As long as we didn't have to be somewhere at a certain time, say, sure, let's go over there. Great. So that's just one example of how faulty our filters can be, and they're faulty much more often than we realize. We are constantly, almost every time we get angry, one of those three filters is probably going to be faulty in one way or another. And we keep thinking that our brain is telling us true, 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 true.
Here's what's coming to mind though on any of this. Like,
Mhm.
in order, we have to pause and you have to become aware of the patterns. But what I am really understanding is it's two things. It's self-awareness and it's introspection.
And there's a third thing. So
Okay.
I would say the self-awareness and the introspection are kind of linked.
Okay.
You have to become aware of the internal causes of your anger, which I just showed you what they are. So we've just solved self-awareness when it comes to anger. You write these three things on an index card, problem solved.
Yeah.
Self-awareness regarding the causes of anger is solved.
Well, I think first it's understanding the patterns like you did in the road trip scenario.
Well,
Understand.
I applied that to that circumstance, okay? But I'm saying that we have solved the self-awareness problem with the index card or the
Okay.
post-it note, okay? So now you have no excuse for not being self-aware. You just pull that out. Okay, you look at it, you go, here's why I'm angry, okay? Trust me, if you think that there's some other reason, not the three things on the card or the post-it note, you're wrong. It's the three things on the post-it note is why you're angry. Okay, so now you have awareness. I now know why I'm angry. Now the tricky part is where's the truth and where's the untruth?
Right.
That's where it's not just self-awareness, but it's like the ability to deeply tell the truth and to recognize when you're being hoodwinked by your brain. Your brain's literally playing tricks on you a lot of the time. And you have to be able to see through that, just like I did. Like I said, I asked that simple question: is she really doing something wrong? And as soon as it wasn't a hard question. We just don't ask it. But as soon as I ask it, it's like, uh-oh, I know the answer. I didn't have to dig. I didn't have to dig very deeply. I mean, it just asking the question in of itself almost presented the answer to me. Is that I knew I was wrong, that she wasn't doing something that was inappropriate. But a lot of times you have to dig in against whatever your brain's telling you is true. And so, for example, in a relationship, we frequently get angry with our partners, and when we're angry, we're seeing them with these horse blinder blame things on, where we're only seeing what they're doing and we're saying that's the whole cause of the matter. We're not seeing anything we may have done.
Yeah.
We're completely blind. It's a blind spot.
Right.
Okay? And so we're striking out at them, we're blaming them, we're trying to correct them. And if you ask yourself, is it true that they're 100% responsible, whatever the issue is, I don't care, that they're 100% responsible and I'm 0% responsible? Is that true? In a relationship, the answer is almost never. It's 100% zero. Now, it may be 90-10, it may be 80-20, we don't know. Whatever the reality is, I don't know. But usually each person in the relationship is playing some kind of a role, either uh, actively or unconsciously, or allowing something to persist that they should have stepped in and done something. There's all kinds of ways that we could have responsibility in the matter that we don't normally see because we got these anger blinders on. And when we're angry, it's like we have blinders on. We just see what we see, what our brain wants us to see, and that makes us angry. And you have to be able to get outside of that to see the larger picture of all the different things that could be going on that we don't, or our brain doesn't always allow us to see.
I want to circle back because we did not finish. You were talking
Mm-hmm.
about the four steps, an event,
Mm-hmm.
an emotion, and the two invisible forces. Can we name them?
Yes. First step is the external trigger,
Yep.
whatever you can see and recognize. Okay. The second step are the three filters that get triggered inside you. Okay. The third step is the stamp of truth. Your brain tells you what's coming through the filters is not filtered, it's truth. Nothing missing, the whole story. Don't bother looking or asking any stupid questions. Just accept what I'm telling you. That's what the brain's doing. Okay. And we're complying, we're going along with that. Okay. And then the fourth step is the anger. The fourth is the outcome, which is you feel the anger. When you have those first three things lining up, the natural consequence is to feel the anger in our body. And then let me give you one more piece. It gets even worse because when we feel the feeling of anger makes us feel justified that what came through the filters is true. It makes us even
Reinforces.
it reinforces it, and it makes it less likely that we're going to challenge it or question it, because
Oh,
the feeling of anger makes us feel righteous and justified.
ah,
It's self-protecting. Okay, it doesn't want us to figure out that a lot of times the whole thing is fake news, or the key thing is fake news.
yeah,
It wants to shut that off so you don't suspect that that's what's going on. So the emotion actually seals the deal and almost makes it impossible for us to break through the falsehoods to get to the truth, because we feel right, and the anger makes us feel even righter. So who's going to challenge, if you feel right about something, who's going to challenge what they feel strongly emotionally correct about? Most people won't.
right.
But
Well, because we
that's where
want to
that's
be right.
yes, yes. But where the gold is in being wrong.
Yeah. What's coming to mind? So we've talked a lot about anger, but I guess my mind just works in pictures. I was thinking about a word cloud, and I think a lot of other emotions that are
Oh yeah.
symptoms of anger, frustration, impatience, stress, anxiety, overwhelm. Can, can we talk about maybe higher, thinking about
Yes,
emotional intelligence as a whole?
let me straighten out that word puzzle for you. Okay.
Uh,
At the top of the top of it, you can, the very top, you can put stress. Okay. So what I teach about, when I'm teaching people about stress, the first thing I teach them is there is no such thing as stress. You've been hoodwinked. Okay. Stress is just a word. It's a concept. It's not a real thing. Yes, there is a stress response in the body. I'm not denying that. Okay. But no human being ever suffers from stress. When you say I've got stress, you don't have stress. You got something else. But you're using this word stress to refer to it. And when I say I've got stress or I'm stressed, I'm not suffering from stress. I'm suffering from something else, but I'm using this word. Okay. So the first thing to do with stress is realize it's just a word that stands for problems. When we say we're stressed, we're having problems that we don't want to have, or bothering us, or stirring up our physiology, making us tense or headaches or whatever it's doing. Okay. But it's the problems in life that we're dealing with or not dealing so well with that is what we call stress. So if you put stress at the top and say stress equals problems, okay, then everything else is a problem that can or may not be stressful for people. So anger is a problem, anxiety is a problem, overwhelm is a problem, relationship issues are a problem, financial issues can be a problem, kids, dealing with kids can be a problem. Having to produce a podcast could be a problem. Whatever the problem is, we all have to deal with problems, and we either deal with them well or we don't. We either, they either linger and cause us upset and difficulty, or bother our sleep, make us tired, fatigued, with all that other stuff, or not. But that's how I would rearrange the word picture. Stress at the top, everything else as a subset of stress, and
Yeah.
they each have their individual lanes,
Yeah.
which is important because every problem we experience in life will have its own set of causes. And you have to really, if you want to do the proactive part, you have to really deal with the causes and not just the symptoms. So that's why it's important not to lump all the problems together. What the stress management industry is telling us to do: take all your problems, lump them all together in one big basket, call that basket stress, and then ask yourself, how can I deal with my stress? All you can do there is deal with the symptoms. Okay. If you want to deal with the causes, you got to go, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm not going to fall for that trap. I'm going to get rid of this word stress. I'm going to separate my problems out, put them on the table in front of me, and I'm going to look at each one individually. And I'm going to say, okay, I've got anger. Okay, what's the causes of anger? I've got anxiety. Okay, what's the causes of anxiety? I've got problems in my marriage. What are the causes of the problems in my marriage? You're going to look at each problem, and you're going to have to figure out what's causing each one so that you can solve it and make the problem go away. That's to me, that's problem elimination as opposed to problem management. you
Well,
you get to the internal, you get to the causes, and you make the problem go away that way.
here's my question on that. A lot of that's using the conscious mind 5%, the analyzing and logic but
Yeah.
if 95% of who we are is in the subconscious, unconscious, how do you make the unconscious conscious?
You can't. You can to some, like, for example, the three filters we talked about is part of the unconscious for most people. They're not aware that that's what's driving their anger. That they're unconscious to it. We just made them conscious to it. So now we've sort of fixed that, okay? But there are a lot of other things that go on in our lives that we're not consciously aware of, that you can become aware of when you start digging in and asking yourself, well, what's causing my problem in my marriage? You may not be consciously aware when you start that question, but when you start exploring and maybe you ask your partner, hey, can you tell me what I might be doing that's causing issues in our relationship? They may very well tell you, because they don't have the same blocks to awareness that you do, and they'll tell you right away what you're doing or what you're not doing if you're willing to listen to them. Okay. So, I mean, there's ways we can get around our unconsciousness if we have the intention to do so. But and so you can discover a lot of what's going on in the unconscious. That happened for me actually in relationships. What happened for me was not just the anger, solving the anger problem. That was a big piece of it. But I also had other weird ideas about relationships that I was totally unaware of. I really had this formula of how to have a relationship with a woman. And I didn't even know I had it, but every time I was in a relationship, I was actually acting from that formula. And it wasn't until I realized what that formula was, and I put it in front of me, and I said, "Is this a good formula?" And I went like, "No, I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with someone who acted that way." And I said, "That's a crappy formula. I don't know where I got it from, but boy, that's been driving my relationships for all these years. I didn't even know I had it. But now that I see it, I got to fix this. This isn't going to work. If I want to have a successful relationship, I better get a new formula." And so I went out and I studied with some people who knew some stuff about relationships, and I kind of hit on some principles of what works. And I reinvented myself
And
as
you
a
put that
relator
on
by
understand.
creating a formula. How about if we built a formula with things that work instead of a formula that's guaranteed to destroy your relationship?
Yeah.
Which would you rather have?
So question, since you're all
Mhm.
about stress elimination, is that what the 3 steps is
Um,
that you shared? Is that how you eliminate by the
well,
inquiry?
when the 3 steps for, if you talk about stress in general, okay, which could be any host of problems, the 3 steps for we're eliminating stress. Step number one, throw out the word stress, replace it with the word problems. Okay. Step two, define what your problems are, get specific about your problems. So that's actually you throw out the word stress like first, and
Yeah.
then the first step is define your problems. Okay. Forget stress, define your problems. Second step is define the causes of your problems. And those are going to be both external and obvious, and internal and not so obvious, maybe subconscious, who knows? Okay. But you got to get them all out on the table, both the obvious and the non obvious. Then deal with those causes until the problem's resolved. You can apply that same 3-step method, which I call the ultimate method for dealing with stress, okay, to any stressful problem you have. It's the same system we use when something happens to our car and we take it to our mechanic. Mechanic figures out, okay, well, let's do a test or diagnostics. We'll see what the cause is. We'll pinpoint the cause. We'll replace this part or that part that was broken, and you're good as new again. Same thing.
So, what I want people to understand, just like you did, if you currently have that identity, you're angry, you're impatient, you're frustrated, your relationships suck, you're in financial woes, you can reinvent yourself and flip the script and have thriving life when you have the self-mastery piece, right?
Yeah, and you can't do it through magic woo-woo thinking, you
Right.
know. What you need to know is that as a human being, you have the power already inside of you to do that. When
Yeah.
I was angry in my 20s and my 30s, if you'd asked me, did I have the power within me during those years to not be angry, I would have said absolutely not. I am not in touch with any such power within me because I can't do anything about my anger. I've tried, believe me. I can't touch it, okay? I can't stop it. But the truth is, I had the power in me all along. I just didn't have the right understanding of where the anger was coming from. That once I had it, it truly unleashed that power. Talk about Tony Robbins, unleash the power within. Once I knew the 4 steps that were involved and the 2 invisible ones, man, that power just jumped out, but it was always there. So you have to know as a human being, you've got the power to overcome most of these problems. You just have to have the right understanding of where they're coming from so you can pinpoint those internal causes, and then you can use your natural human power to deal with them, correct them, reinvent a better way of understanding or operating in those domains, which we all can do. Okay. And we in fact do it intuitively a lot of the time, but you can be very strategic about it. And if you decide, like I did, I decided I wanted to be better and have a better formula for relationships. So I strategically identified people I wanted to learn from and read their books and go to their seminars, listen to their tapes and stuff, because I wanted to re-engineer myself. And I did.
Yeah.
And 40th wedding anniversary yesterday.
Well, and I think even that was a phenomenal word to re-engineer. And here's the thing, we weren't given these tools. We have not been taught these things,
Mm-mm.
been very conditioned into limitation and a cog in a wheel. And so
Yes.
the fact is the information is available. That's what personal development is, a huge thriving industry because I
Yep.
think so many people are sick and tired of these limiting patterns, right?
And I think we all know intuitively that we have this enormous power within us. We know it, we just don't know how to get to it and how to make it real. But we sense at some level that, hey, we see other people doing it who maybe look less accomplished than we are or less talented than we are. But so we know we have the ability. We just and everything coming at us is telling us we don't.
Right.
That's part of the problem. There's just all this brainwashing. You don't have power. You're a victim. You're oppressed. Life is just doing you bad. This group is doing you bad. This system is doing you bad. This political party is doing you, whatever it is. It's all coming at us like you don't have power, as a human being, which
I
is
call
wrong.
Yeah. I call that noise. And
Yeah,
I mean, I've learned I just tune a lot of it out. I haven't watched the news in years, but I'm very intentional with what I'm consuming because I don't want to live in that struggle.
yeah, and it will pollute your brain. It will definitely get into your brain,
Yeah.
and it will reduce your power.
So here's what I want to ask you because I really want to empower individuals. When you have the self-awareness, when you have these tools, when you apply the knowledge that you're learning, can you paint a picture? I know you're sharing, 40 years of kind of like this marital bliss, but what else is available for individuals when we're doing this work and can shine a light on the dark?
Well, take any area of life that you want to be better at, and Lord knows there's a lot of them. Okay, maybe you want to be better at sales and marketing. Maybe you want to write a book. Maybe you want to be, be a public speaker or do seminars and workshops. Whatever, whatever strikes your fancy that you want to do. Whatever you want to do, you could learn how to do it. You put yourself in the right environment, you listen to the right YouTube videos, you go to the right seminars. There's plenty of knowledge out there, like you say, plenty of personal development expertise and trainers and teachers out there. You just have to decide what you want to make yourself into and get good at and go do it. I think I just heard yesterday Roger Federer gave a commencement speech somewhere. And I didn't hear the details of the speech, but it's something like that. It's like, find something in life that you want to be good at and work at it. Make yourself good at it. And he's become an incredible champion tennis player. Just that's what he wanted to do. That was his passion.
Choice. The word that came to mind through all that is choice. You
Yes.
have a choice. What are you choosing?
Yes.
Here's what I want to ask you. What do you believe is a key takeaway you want listeners to get?
I think two key takeaways are don't buy into the myth of, once an angry person, always an angry person. Anger can be cured. Not only have I cured it in myself, but I've helped hundreds of people turn their anger situations around that they wouldn't have believed possible, or you wouldn't believe possible. So it's a myth that we buy into. And the second key takeaway is all you have to do is focus on those three filters that we talked for anger. We're only talking about one problem now, anger. Okay, if you focus on those three filters and realize that every time you're angry or anybody around you is angry, okay, you know how they're thinking generically or how they're perceiving generically. Okay, so you know what's driving the anger, and that's something that will be useful to you for the rest of your life. So I've been using that for the last 40 years. I've been teaching it. I don't I don't think it's going to go out of fashion. It's always going to illuminate where a human being's anger is coming from. They're looking at things that way, and they may or may not be correct in terms of their perceptions. A lot of times we're not.
Right.
That's where the secret is, to get really good at recognizing where our brain has tricked us.
Love that. All right, to wrap up the interview, I have a few rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
What is a quote or motto that you live by?
Uh, the map is not the territory.
Explain that.
I think I don't remember who originated it, but it's again our when you draw a map, you're representing reality
Yeah,
on the ground, but
yeah,
it's never the reality. So if you're going into war, for example, and you're a general and you have a map of the battlefield, okay, when you actually are fighting the battle, things change. Things are not what you thought they were going to be. The map is never the actual territory. It's just a representation of the territory, and it can be wrong, and it frequently is wrong. So that's part of my whole uh, mission, is to show people that the maps that our brain gives us, the filters, of which there are many more than just those three, the filters that our brain gives us are frequently wrong,
yeah.
and the territory is reality. You have to figure out how reality functions and reality works.
What is a book you're currently reading or highly recommend in this space?
Other than my own book, I recommend, let's see, Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert comic, has written several books. His most recent book is called Reframe Your Brain.
Mm.
So he has about more than 100 simple reframes that will help people solve various problems in life with just a simple phrase, or they're not an affirmation. It's not an affirmation. It's really literally just looking at life a little differently, or just choosing to look at it differently could change your whole flavor of a particular problem. So a lot of them are very good.
Nice. All right, final question. What advice would you give your younger self?
I would say don't be so afraid of being wrong, which I was for a long time. Don't forget, I was trained as a doctor,
Yeah.
and that actually became a barrier in terms of it was good for me professionally, because you get trained to never be to try to never be wrong. Like that's the worst thing that you can do as a doctor is make a wrong diagnosis or give a wrong treatment or so. So I had this whole training for years of don't be wrong, don't be wrong, don't be wrong, which is good. You want your doctor to have that training, okay? But
Uh,
when your doctor goes home, in his family life or when he's dealing with his own emotions, stuff like that, being wrong is the gold. That's where you figure out where your brain has tricked you, and then you can figure out what the corrections are. And if you're unwilling to consider you could be wrong, then you're shut off from all that opportunity, which is where I was for a number of years.
yeah.
So I would tell my younger self, you don't want to be wrong in medicine when you're being a doctor, but every other area, it's okay. If you want to explore that you might be wrong and you want to dig around in there and see what you can discover, go for it. Don't feel bad about it. Don't feel restricted that you can't do that. So
Yeah, a little
there's good.
humility goes a long way.
Goes a long, long way. There's gold in them there hills.
That's such a great note to end on. Dr. Mort, thank you so much for joining me.
You are very welcome. Thank you for a great conversation.